Hey everybody, before we get into the autopsy, we need to give out the award for Detective of the Ark. We need to decide who is going on the wall of detectives. I had a lot of fun going through everybody's questions and queries and theories, etc. That's the phrase, that people submitted through email. I went through all of them. I think I replied to everybody. If I didn't, I'm so sorry, but I'm pretty sure I did. And there were some really, really good solves across the board. I would say that in general, most people who got like a full solution for this mystery were coming in, not everybody did. People were coming in 5 and 6 with different theories, which is great. That's normal, right? That's how it happens. But I think for most of the people who got it right, who really sort of hit the nail on the head, it was happening after episode 4. And so a lot of people started to really click in there, like, yes, I'm going to make the call. I'm going to say what the solution was. And that was very impressive from everybody. And if you did that, you should be very happy. There were a few people, however, I wanted to give special mention to who got in a bit earlier and sort of had a proper idea of what was going on. So first of all, actually, I'd love to give a quick honorable mention, a quick shout out to Eric White, who wrote all of his theories as like first-person fan fiction from the perspective of a cop that worked for Simba who was annoyed at these Bill and Dani detectives coming in and thinking they're so hot. It was fantastic. It was a really lovely read, and it was very fun to read. I'm not saying everybody should put in their theories that way. It took me a while to read it, but that was very lovely to see. The next honorable mentions, we had a couple people who, after part 3, came in with a really good solution for like a solve of what was going on. Stephen Reese Carter came in after episode 3 with most of the details pretty much spot on. Meg Roulier came in after part 3 with a perfect solution, like every single thing in line. It was really lovely to read. So for Stephen and Meg, that was very, very cool. Sadly, some people were really on the ball. I wanted to give another final shout out to Rob Kaiser, who after episode 1, with 5 minutes left in episode 1, basically just wrote in saying, here's the situation. I think Victoria, key in the pocket, she was evil, trying to sacrifice someone. They were tied up in the basement. The intended victim got free, killed her, took the key, and they got out. That's what I reckon it is. Very impressive, and very quick to get that. But I think some people may have had that thought and come in. But I was very impressed with, and I will give the Detective of the Ark, up on the wall of detectives, is going to Owen. Owen, who gave us a full rundown of every single episode, but after episode 1, pretty much had the whole structure of it, but didn't know enough to put in any more details, similar to Rob. But by episode 2, had a full reconstruction of all of like the characters and the motives, what the casino meant. Noticed in episode 1 there was debt based on multiple credit cards before even seeing the notes, and just a lot of really nice conclusions backed up with evidence from the episodes. And basically, look, had the wrong killer after episode 2, but quickly got that fixed up in the following episodes. But had a really nice reconstruction of basically the whole crux of the mystery with evidence after episode 2, and I was very impressed. So a very good solve, Owen. And you're going up on the wall. All right. That is all covered. I hope you enjoyed the mystery. I hope you enjoyed listening along and giving in solutions if you did. And if you didn't, maybe next time you will, because it's always nice for me to read what people are thinking as we go. And congratulations again to Owen. Let's get into the rest of the autopsy. Welcome to Solve This Murder. I'm your coroner, Bill.
And I'm your mortuary assistant, Dani.
We finished the Furtive Fiend.
This was challenging, though it did seem like the main crux of the challenge was my own fault.
Oh, because you'd assume that she was tied up with ropes and you forgot that there was no evidence of it?
Apparently, yeah.
I really hope that I don't go back to the edit and realize that I was like, oh, wrists are covered in rope burn. So much rope burn.
It's shocking that I didn't make any sort of note about that. But, yeah, because that hurt me.
Yes, it's one of these things. You probably would have made a note if I had said, like, definitely didn't, no rope marks. So presumably you just sort of assumed they would be there and didn't check.
One can only assume, but that's weird because I clearly checked her body. How did I not do that? Maybe I just got distracted and I said, hey, can I look at like her hand area? And then you told me about the painty sort of mix on fingers and that just distracted me from it.
Maybe. That's probably it. It was probably no wrist markings, but you do see stuff on her hands, X, Y, Z.
I would believe
a little
that.
bit of, which I think is fair, because you don't want too early on to just be like, here's a big clue. So even if I give it to you, I like kind of then going, but here's some other stuff to look at.
No, totally.
I think letting things get lost in the shuffle and have to come back is kind of like good. I think that's part of what it
Very
is.
fair.
It needs this thing of like, let me check all these things that I've got. Let me check my assumptions. Let me check what I've
it'll be a
remembered.
little tougher on the people who are binge listening to this because they won't be forgetting things
Yes,
the way
true.
that I
They
do.
won't have that week by week. Because, even for the recording of this, there were a couple of fairly lengthy breaks just due to other stuff we had to do. So I think it was probably 3 sessions of recording to get through this mystery.
It was. With the last one being the biggest gap and needed to stretch back to it.
Yeah, which is hardest because it leads into the denouement. I liked bringing everybody back for a denouement, even if it was kind of silly. I found an odd balance there for the denouement of knowing what you were hinting at, but not knowing whether it was appropriate to have a character sort of say that thing. And make sure that you definitely have that. And it feels like it's your... Because I think that happens in a lot of denouements, is like Poirot will clearly know that this person stole this thing. So he'll say, oh, I wonder what you are doing with the diamond. And someone says, I only stole it to feed my children. And it's like, okay, cool. Like they jump out and say it, but I want to make sure that it's still fundamentally an earned thing. And I don't think I jumped ahead of anything there.
The only times that I wasn't sure, you would go into something like that and you'd say, but what does this mean? And then I would pause and go, all right, hang on, I don't know yet.
Let me find out what this means.
You're right, we've hit the bit where I've just been talking so that I don't have to solve this thing.
But see, this is the thing. I think, like, we used to do this occasionally, this, like, dynamic denouement of you don't know the solution, but while you're figuring out the solution, why don't we bring in a bunch of characters to look at you to figure it out?
Yeah, it's kind of a panic.
I don't mind it, though. I think it's a bit of fun. No. But you've put me in that position before, and it is a panic. So what do you mean I can do this? I can't do this.
It was definitely fun, and I didn't mind the fact that I did indeed have that last bit of, wait, I assume that she must have been okay with sacrificing her sister. I'm going with ways that makes sense to me.
Yes, and I think that was one of those key things
you did have to hit me with a bit of a hammer for that.
But I don't mind that either, because I like this thing of like, I think that's a classic detective-y like moment of like, and so we all know this is true, and therefore here's my theory. And then someone goes, but wait a second. That's not true. And you have to suddenly be like, wait.
The detective usually in the denouement doesn't then go, crap, 1 second.
But I think that's nice. So yeah, that was one where you were trying to figure out why, how does this make sense? She must not like her sister, but then what, da-da-da. And that key thing of like, no, sorry, you've now got people in this room with you and you've said the statement, she doesn't love her sister. She loved her sister. And yeah, that was the point, is this thing of, remembrance of what you talked with Monk about, of like you have to sacrifice things that are important and meaningful. The talk from Caleb of like saying you have to sacrifice the things you love most in life to succeed. It's a metaphor saying that you have to sacrifice these things yourself and put them aside if you want to succeed in business, and there's a trade-off. But for this like occult interpretation, it's literally, why don't you take the things that you love and sacrifice them to appease the demon Elantiel?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. My notes for this, I wouldn't call them sparse notes, but I never take down quotes and things like that people have said. Whereas when I read detective fiction, those are the moments where characters are spilling things, when they're just going on, where they've got a little mini diatribe of their own. And that's when you do have to look out for specific words of import.
Yes.
So it is one of those things that I know how important that can be, but just because of the format that we've got, it wasn't very... that's not really a thing that you can take down in your notebook as you go. Just saying, hold on. Caleb, can you say all that again?
Yeah, yes, true. It was very interesting. There was a bit that got... we got caught... Oh, yes, I wanted to mention this. There was something that came up during the denouement. I don't know how much of this sort of made it as a really strong statement at the end. That one of the things that really caught you was this line from Caleb... when he was confronting what he thought was the Jonathan Hatge, basically saying, I don't know what she told you, I don't know what she promised you, or something like that.
Yes.
And you really keyed onto that. I want to go into this. What was your sort of interpretation of what that might mean? Because I can tell you exactly what the sentiment was, and I think I encapsulated it in his interaction at the end there. But what was your thought when you heard that at first?
If I put it all together, I would have said that my thoughts were somewhere along the lines of that Jonathan Hatke was, he was someone else's. Maximilian just used him, but he belonged to some woman.
That's fair. And I think in my head, I thought that was how you were taking it. I thought you were expecting Maximilian to be a woman when they appeared to be the boss. And whereas in this case, my interpretation of that, because I needed an interaction.
I even said, hey, I'd like to meet him, and was wondering if that would get any surprise.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Because this is one of these cases where, and for people who've ever tried to run these based on the notes that I have, obviously in my notes, there is no section for what happens when Dani dresses Hayden Flincham up as the menacing man, puts him on buckets and has him stand, in the street in a way to elicit a reaction, right? I don't have anything set for this. So I have to think to myself, okay, I want this to be, I think the payoff of a plan is good. You should have a meaningful interaction rather than just like you set up this plan and the person goes, oh, I never even noticed that man with the hat. So I wanted Caleb to notice and I wanted him to like have some interaction, something. And in my head, the world that I built for Caleb in that moment was he has seen this person as well in the last 3 weeks, tailing Victoria. He also then thinks, okay, I know she is doing poorly in business stuff, or I suspect. She probably owes someone a lot of money. I reckon that guy's like a debt collector or a thug or in the end he was a thug, but someone who's trying to be like, hey, you owe us money, trying to intimidate her. And I think he had knew that relationship existed there. So when he finds out from you, Victoria has died, something has happened to Victoria, in his head, he's like, okay, so maybe they killed her or maybe she's died or whatever. But he then thinks, I now see that same guy watching me. Did Victoria say like, or even if he didn't, I don't know if he knew she was dead yet or something, but he just sees the person who's tailing her is tailing him. So in his mind, I think he thinks, do they assume that I'm going to pay the debt? Did she say that I'm good for it? Did she say Caleb's got the money, like Caleb can pay you as some last attempt to avoid getting hurt? Like, so his thought of what did she, I don't care what she told you, I don't care what she promised you was I don't care, like, I don't know if she told you that I'm going to pay her debts. I'm not going to give you any money. You aren't going to get anything from me to pay her debts just because I knew her, like, become part of the brotherhood. Or I kind of look after her. I give her, like, I'm not taking that role. That to me was the world I wanted to build for him as an earnest but meaningful reaction with that character. So that was my version on the fly of what his concern would be, which is, did she say I was going to take over her debt because I'm not doing that, you idiot? But he stopped at that point because he realized it was Hayden, and that thread ends there because he's not saying it to actual Hatke.
Makes sense.
Because there was never a promise that was made.
No.
Yeah. But in the end, you got it. It was an interesting one of this, like, victim is killer, but killed by victim who got away.
Worked great. But yeah, there were definitely questions right up until the end of who the hell else was in that basement.
And in the end, there was, it was her, it was Nicole.
And it still caught me off guard of saying, oh no, 2 victims?
Yeah.
Double sacrifice.
I will say the footage of the sister leaving is not in my notes.
Oh no?
No, that's not in my notes.
Oh, that was so exciting.
I like it. I found that moment like that would be a good thing to see, I reckon. But part of that is because like a lot of the information here that you want to give is based on what you already know. So like if that had been just a thing you could see, but you hadn't already like found a blood trail, leaving the thing, finding the weapon, I feel like it would have been way too much to give. So in that case, I may have given you someone leaving, but you can't make out any details to lead you to the blood trail and the murder weapon. Because you'd already found blood trail and murder weapon, you'd found, and I wanted something more to come out of this footage. I thought, and because you very explicitly said, can I continue to watch the door for the moment when the person leaves? Because I know that a person left, I know that they left a trail. Can I just watch for it? Effectively, was me going, all right, well, that's a very reasonable thing to investigate. You deserve a reward for a good idea. How can I reward this? And because you already knew the trail, I can't reward you with something you already know.
No, you kept the balance very nice.
So it was a reward of a new confusing question of a person who looks exactly like the victim leaves in a manner that you know must have happened after
How
the victim
much
was
did
dead.
you want to lean into the two of them looking alike? Because I definitely wondered how much identity swapping I should be worried about.
I knew you would, and I thought that was enough, just a hint at same hair to make you start thinking, is there a swap, is there not? And then I don't need to add any of that because I think you'll make that in your head. Also worth noting, the woman's scream that Ruben heard was the sister.
Fair enough.
Was Nicole, because he just heard a woman kind of make a muffled scream, and that was her sort of waking up a little bit while being dragged into the building and screaming. One piece of information that I never expected you to go, but you could have done, is you could have called taxi companies to be like, who did you take that? No, they wouldn't have had very good information either. But again, could have that was my original source for a similar looking woman. So they would have said...
Right. I considered just then, I should have asked Nicole how she got home the other night.
Yeah, so that taxi, because if you remember, the knife was...
right next to a taxi rank, yes.
The taxi driver picked up a blonde woman in her late 30s, early 40s, a man in a dark suit, and a short, fat man that night. Short, fat man could have been David or Hayden. Man in a dark suit, you might have thought maybe Hat Guy, maybe Caleb. And then the real thing was picking up Nicole was the only one who actually mattered there. And then that puts in this description of, wait, blonde hair, but picked up that night leaving then? Is that her? And then that was my source of someone with a similar description. And instead, in this version of the game, got replaced with ATM footage. Playtesters found footage with a very clear image of Hat Guy by looking for security footage at Victoria's office in the lobby. So I gave them a complete, you do not know who this man is, but if you see this man, you will recognize this man.
Oh, well, that wouldn't have worked for me anyway. I'm face blind.
True. For you, I gave that as the hat. Because
Thank
I
you.
wanted, at that point, because it was late, I wanted you to recognize them. But if you'd gone to the casino early, I probably wouldn't have given you that.
You wouldn't have even given him a hat?
No, I wouldn't have given him a hat.
Oh, man.
If you'd gone really early without having investigated Hat Guy, I wouldn't just be like, and you see a Hat Guy, you'd be like, okay, well, I know who that is, right? Because you want it to be payoff for something you've earned.
Absolutely.
So for my playtesters, they'd earned it by looking at footage. For you, you'd earned it by really watching him, figuring that out. You had a lot of information about this guy and this hat, and you'd done a hat play, and it was at this point, you should be able to find him, especially because you've already talked to everyone other than going to the sister's house.
I appreciate you working with my problems with faces for that. Thank you.
Because that's, I think, if you're running these, if anyone ever does want to run these, I think, and I don't know if you agree, if you think about this as much as I do, but there's this thing of some places are very information rich, but if you go to them first, it's well, how do I control the information?
It's really hard.
For instance, for me, the sister would not have been home if you'd gone to the sister's home first.
Ah, yeah.
And then you would have still seen the physical evidence of the 2 teacups, but no sister. You wouldn't have found that tea yet. So then, the revelation would have been going to Victoria's house and finding the teapots and being what's going on?
Yeah, you do have to. I think it's inevitable that for these you have to be able to time and story gate some information.
Yes, yeah, because otherwise...
In an escape room, you can puzzle gate certain things, so it's physically impossible to access something. But in these physical blockages like that, no, your player is probably just going to want to go and see certain things, and it's going to feel weird if they can't go there.
Yes, and you have to pay off a person's desire to do a thing. And yeah, for me, my version would have been the sister isn't there. She'll have wound up somewhere else. You find her later. The
usual biggest thing where this comes up is anytime something goes to the lab, you have to figure out an appropriate time to give that back, because it could be any time. Could be immediately, but
so straight away you
annoying.
wanted ATM footage. Obviously, that can give you a lot of information. So I wanted you to have information before getting it. So, but that's also the best thing about it.
Did I ever send that knife off to the lab to get fingerprinted or anything?
Yeah, they were Nicole's fingerprints. I think that is the benefit of send it to the lab. It's a really great way as a player to say, I want to know this, but I'm not going to, I will trust you to give it to me when it's appropriate. Which, thank you for that. Feel free to always send stuff to the lab. It works really well. And it's a good tool as the person running it to be like, okay, you've earned some extra info. Let's give
It's
this,
also
this,
not
this.
bad if I am flailing towards a time where we could end an episode. So you give me something that's a good little hook to end an episode
yes,
with.
It is a nice way to end an episode when we're trying to find that moment. Sometimes we just don't get it naturally, and it's like, all right, well, I've got one in the bag. Let me just open the bag and be like, whoop, here's a moment to end an episode on. It is very helpful. Just be like, hey, this thing came back, fingerprints. Hey, this thing came back, poison. Hey, this thing came back, whatever. It was interesting. Yeah, the other one that was we didn't get explicitly mentioned, but I assume you knew it already. Like one of those things that indicates she was afraid was the gun that she had in her apartment. She had bought a gun. She had it loaded on her bedside table. Like that is a person who is afraid that she's going to get attacked.
Absolutely.
It was an interesting one to balance because the real solution, like fundamentally the solution is, someone else was tied up, killed her to get out, and she just wanted to sacrifice them. And so the rest of that mystery is kind of like the question of, well, why?
Yeah.
And in the end, that's where you have to know about business, you have to know about owing money, you have to know about all this sort of, you have to know about all that stuff going on.
And why taking that to a murder is the correct
why kill your
approach
sister,
for her to take.
You know what? And so like setting her up as a true believer makes a big part of that. So you have to kind of find out she really believes in the occult.
Mm-hmm. Which
also,
started out as little things like, hey, she got candles.
Yeah, just these little hints. Oh, she
Good food.
Had food that made sense for this demon.
Yeah.
All these sorts of things. So yeah, you build that up. So then you think, okay, this now is an option she takes because of its efficacy, not as an excuse or anything to kill someone, but she earnestly wants to sacrifice something. And then you have to set up what is she missing and what is the danger in her life? What is she scared of? Did you, like in the meantime, like did you assume at any point that like Hat Man was an indication of these are the people who did kill her? Because that's sort of their role, is to both create a sense of fear, but also like an indication that maybe she was being watched, maybe someone wanted to kill her.
Look, Hat Man himself, certainly not. I did float the idea in my head that there were various Hat Men related to the Brotherhood.
Yeah. So like Caleb has some jealousy of her.
This may have still also been the I don't know what she's told you situation where I assumed there was some big powerful she running
that's also
the show.
Yeah. There was a couple in things in here of like, Caleb is jealous of the position. I think you went through that of like, is jealousy of that position enough to like kill and sacrifice and all that? You know?
Even then going into the Maximilian stuff, I went, well, this is okay. I knew that she was in a bit of financial difficulty. It really was very atmospheric going to the casino where I didn't get much new information out of the casino exactly, but it just made it feel like it hit home a lot better and made it feel like, okay, no, this is a real push for her to be making decisions that she's making.
There's like a timer on this. There's like a thing that she's worried about.
Yeah, it felt very nice the way that was presented.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Because, all of that was stuff I could have known because I had all of the financial stuff available to me. And that was definitely what sold it.
Yes, you sometimes need things to just like put a bow on it to be like, hey, I know there have been hints of this or hints of that. This is the like, yes, you can write down.
And then the consideration, so is it Maximilian and Hatke that did this? And I'm just going, well, then the Brotherhood stuff is all irrelevant. Why there? What's going on?
Yeah. Everyone has a place in the story, and Maximilian as a vague threat that did not do it is a reasonable place.
Yeah, he was definitely an important part. He was a reasoning behind stuff happening, but he wasn't the reason for the other bits and pieces. He wasn't the reason for what the hell is going on in this basement.
Yeah. I feel like this mystery was not quite as much like other mysteries I think we've done have had like, it could have been this person, it could have been this person, it could have been this person, let's figure out who it was and what. Like this I felt had less like false paths and more just, can you finish this jigsaw and get from the one path and make it make sense?
It felt extremely influenced by our work on Golden Idol. In that way, because there are several scenes in Golden Idol when I've been either playing the first game or playtesting scenes that I didn't have a part in writing for the second game. Where I do that, I go through, I look at everything in the scenario, and then I go, oh, damn, I've looked at everything. That means I now need to solve whatever the hell this is. Okay, let's sit down and think for a minute. And I didn't realize I had all of the pieces, but apparently somehow you do. That was very much what it felt like in this case. Did you feel that way at all?
I think I agree. I think there probably was some influence there. Just like, I'm going to paint these scenes, put in all this stuff, put in, the sort of thing each person says.
Now, what was your process for doing this? Because you wrote this one fast. You had another one that you were writing and it was taking you forever and you weren't feeling it. So you scrapped it and you started this and you rocketed through.
So
how did it come into existence?
So obviously there's been some things that have like, we haven't done a Solve This Murder for a while. A big part of that was, health issues. I don't know whether it got a Solve This Murder announcement, but I may as well while we're here. I was diagnosed with leukemia in like September of last year, and it sort of like put a lot of plans aside dealing with that. I'm perfectly fine. As much as I have leukemia, like it's a super chill, manageable thing, and I'm just on a pill every day, and that's it. And I'm basically not affected by the drug, by the cancer anymore.
Just hit by the waves of weirdness.
Yes, yeah, it definitely makes working a little bit tougher because I get like fatigue and other stuff just from the medication. But overall, hey, if you're gonna get cancer, get chronic myeloid leukemia. It's pretty chill. But so we kind of had this long end of year and start of the next year, like not able to get much out. So in times where there probably otherwise might have been a Solve This Murder in like October of last year.
Yeah, I was hoping we could get one done
until,
by the end of the year, but
yeah, I think probably it would have been like in October, but instead it's in February. But all that time I was working towards I had this mystery that I wanted to work on. I had an interesting idea for it, but I just could not make the mystery work. It was like the cool idea I had wasn't the crux of the mystery. It was like one element of the scenario. And so I was trying to build around this, and I was not making any progress.
And in those sorts of stories, when you've got something like that you cling to, it will often reach a stage in writing where that is the bit that needs to get cut, because it will feel like it's been jammed in by the time the final product exists. And then it was sort of like, you just have nothing.
Sucks. And so I made a moment where I was like, we need to get a Solve This Murder out. We need to get on track. So I'm just going to boom, throw it out, start again.
Yeah, and you might be able to use those pieces for another one.
Maybe I will.
Or come back to it as it is, who knows?
Yeah.
But your brain needed to reset.
So I stopped. I thought, what's a cool idea? What's an actual murder that's interesting, as opposed to a scenario that's interesting, and I'll figure out where the murder fits. So what's a murder that's interesting? What if there was someone who looked like a demonic sacrifice, but turned out they were the one who was doing the sacrifice?
That was where you started?
That was my first thought.
Oh,
it was
okay.
Someone like a woman is dead near a sacrificial demon circle. Turns out she was going to kill someone, and they killed her and let her escape. That was the image I had. And then I think I did the full plan of this in about 3 days, and then tweaked it a bit, started writing it up, did a play test, wrote up more of it, and then we started recording, and it took us a little while to record it. But in general, I would say it's basically like a 3-day construction.
Unbelievable.
Before the first playtest. My notes, I can go through my notes a little bit if you like.
As in what changed, or your creation notes?
My creation notes.
Cool. And yeah, if there's anything that changed from the playtest.
Yeah. So I playtested this with a bunch of our Patreon donors for $50 donors, which, I would not say is you're paying for playtests. You're paying to support the network. But when I need to pick playtesters for a Solve This Murder, I'll pick them from the $50 donors. So I did make some changes there, but I'll go through those last. I want to go through my notes first of all.
That'd be great.
So I went new murder, something shocking, interesting setting.
One can only hope.
I've written... Oh, yeah, so my notes here to myself. So I just sort of write conversationally to myself when I try and come up with an idea. It's just the way I have to do it.
No, I get that. Sometimes I do that. I told you that in my last Escape This podcast. I just went, all right, here's the thing. And then I'd written, or maybe something more interesting than that. How about this?
Well, so I've written here, so talking about the one that I abandoned, saying, the last problem was a fun bit, but not an interesting murder. So let's think about an actually interesting murder first, not the surrounding bits. First note. A demon summoning appears to have killed someone. Originally, the two lines were meant to maybe make you think, oh, it's a demon's claw, a big claw animal. That was part of my original thought. This obviously can't be true, but what is true?
I mean, I can't help but notice that in my very first episode notes, I have very explicitly written tool, not teeth. So you did not try to steer me down that path for 1 minute.
Cast is a mix of true believers and normies.
Nice.
Death appears to be from demon attack, but why did the murder actually happen? Some motives. Follow a usurping position in cult/secret society. That was the red herring of Caleb. Evangelical anti-capitalist punishment of secret society. Never came up. Personal sufferer of the ritual/past rituals. Owner of sacrificed animal. Victim of attempted human sacrifice. Current girlfriend/old friend. Turns out this guy was really getting into it. Thought this would help. Currently in hot water with various people, thought this could get them out of it.
Mm.
The Victoria, the victim at this point, was a man.
Yeah.
Other people seemed suspicious, but they ruined his life, didn't kill him, just led to these desperate actions. So that was the whole crux of the thing, straight away on that page.
Nice.
I will point out, Elantiel,
Yeah.
that's a real demon.
Yeah, you mentioned that as we were going.
Elantiel is one of the names of the demon Clownek or Claunt, which is just one of these like traditional demonology demons, a demon of wealth. That symbol, if you Google it, you'll find sigil of Clownek and it appears. And I thought to myself for a while, I was like, oh, should I avoid doing it with this sort of like real demon stuff? And then I went, demons aren't real. I don't care. If someone's like, that's not what Clownek's actually like in the Key of Solomon, I'll be, who cares about the Key of Solomon? If you're a demonologist, get over it.
Sorry, that's the earliest known text in which he appears. 18th century? It's not even that ancient.
No, but it's that one. It's like an 18th century book that says this is a copy of a book written in the 1300s.
Yeah, sure. Oh,
so
wow.
not even that old anyway. But yeah, so I was just like, whatever. I'm happy to play in demonology and not worry so hard about it.
Nice.
And then went through all these notes. Kind of had like I've written like the person track and the demon track. I've drawn a little version of the crime scene and where stuff is and what the evidence you find there is. And then I've drawn my little web.
Ooh, that is a web.
And so I have a web here. Now, what that is to get all of like the ideas of how you follow the investigation. It's like I've got crime scene with an arrow coming off saying location. Goes like weird building, ownership of the building. Because that's one way to find Caleb Humble, which you didn't do, I think. But you can just go to City Records to see who owns this building, and you will get to Caleb Humble that way.
What was going on upstairs in that building? Because
I just wanted some stuff.
Yeah, you like said to me after we'd finished our first recording of, and you've still got the rest of the building to explore.
When I said that, all I wanted you to do was look at the back of the entryway.
I still hadn't found the key at that point.
You hadn't found the key in the blood.
You're right. I forgot about that.
And to look in the kitchen cupboard to see a disorganized kitchen cupboard that meant that the occult stuff there belonged to a person who was not neat, and Victoria was the only person you found who was not neat explicitly. But it's like you follow the ID to the job, follow the wounds to strange weapon to occultism to occult store. I've got a list of like on that web who are the characters that might exist, so I could start like giving them Patreon names and giving them like evidence that they would have. And it was mostly with this web that I ran and a little bit of write-up that I ran the playtest. So in the playtest, there were a couple changes. I originally had way more information on the body. She had a purse with like a couple of credit cards and her ID, and the gun was in the purse, and it was just too much.
That might have made things different.
Exactly. Yeah, and it just led to too much.
Sure, I think that's very fair.
They looked at her ID and went, "Well, let's go to a home address," and I went, "Oh yeah, IDs have addresses on them," and I invented a home address on the fly during the playtest, and then I made it a real thing. So originally, a lot of the stuff that you found at home was actually in the office.
Sure.
And I moved it there. There was no drugging in the original. It was
really?
At gunpoint she abducted her sister.
Ooh, that's harder to figure out for sure.
Yes, much harder to figure out. But that's why I gave the gun to her straight away. But then it became clear, like they were just, it just was a bit like, well, she's got a gun. I wonder if she abducted someone else. It's her gun. It's like, I don't want to do that quite as much. I changed some of the mechanics of the basement door lock because it didn't make sense. It was like, why is it only locked from the inside, not the outside? I was like, it should lock from both sides. I
didn't question anything like that for a second.
Kitchen cupboard, I think I put some paint in there. I can't remember.
Oh, quite possibly.
I wrote knife should, and then there's no rest of that sentence. So I don't know what that was. They just Googled the sigil straight away. So I thought to myself, if you try that, I might make it not Googleable and make you actually have to go find an occult store. Because they never talked to an occult store owner.
Oh,
so I thought I'm going to make things I'm going to make you go to an occult store.
Yep, sure.
To get that kind of information. They went building ownership straight to Caleb Humble. I wanted the receipts to be more specific about like stopping at 3 weeks ago to kind of build a timeline a bit more.
Yeah,
so
I could definitely see that you'd put effort into the timeline.
So I did that so that there's like a building, like, oh, she has been harried for 3 weeks. She's owed money for a long time. She's trying to get out of it, this, that, and the other. So I added that in. Yeah, and here, drugged sister. So adding in the concept of drugging her because there's evidence you can leave it in various places.
Yeah, coming back to her and having her be confused and me immediately, even though it would have been several episodes ago, going, wait a minute.
Yeah.
That was fun.
And then the next page I did
really like
a
that.
refined web and I just restructured it.
Look at those. Those arrows are overlapping each other in such pretty ways.
Yeah. So
it looks
that's my little web.
organized chaos.
And then I ticked them all off as I wrote up their entries in the document. One thing I did in the document for people who have seen my other write-ups of like in-flight incident, et cetera, this one, every time I had a new person or place, I did in italics underneath, like, here is how the detective might get to this person. So, like, for example, in my notes, I'll read you an example one. These notes are linked. For people who want to play this at home, you can have the exact same notes that I use to run it. But as you're finding out from my discovery, you need to read them and know them before you run it. You can't really do it on the fly.
No, God, no.
So, for example, Golden Sky. The Golden Sky Casino can be found by... Golden Sky - Maximilian. They're both under one entry. The Golden Sky Casino can be found by following up on the receipts found in Victoria's home, being told about her gambling issues by Hayden or David, or finding and following the mysterious figure following Victoria.
Ah.
So you could just follow him back to the casino.
So he could have done some sort of... He was always a sting victim in some way.
Yeah, you could have been like, I'm just going to camp out, wait till a figure appears in front of this door and then chase him down.
God.
That was open for that. David Sagstad. David can be found after talking with Caleb or on a client list at Buckland Financial.
Nice.
Players may also find him if they wait at the crime scene, because he might just turn up for like a meeting.
Sure.
Or get a specific description from Rubenberg. Like, pick one of the guys. Tell me everything you know about him, kind of thing. So yeah, I have all these sorts of things, and then they list underneath all there. But I like that as an addition to be kind of clear of like, how might you get here?
I debated doing things like asking Caleb for just like, tell me all of the goddamn members of the Brotherhood. Would you have been willing to allow that, or just said no, or said yes but irrelevant?
A lot of these things I have is like, when pressed, might say this. Some of that, I think at that point I probably would have because you needed a sort of a next steps at that moment because Hayden's quite easy to find, but after that it's like, have you uncovered the right things? So I think you probably could have got a list from him. Though in the end you sort of did get a bit of a list of like that from going through her appointment book, and you found that David.
Sure, but I meant
Caleb,
like if I asked Caleb, hey, tell me all of your members, I need to find all of them.
Yeah, I think I would have avoided that mostly because, like, obviously I only have
That's unwieldy, yes.
So I think a lot of them would have just not been around. I think make them more... If you really, really pressed and you wouldn't take no for an answer, it might just be like, look, here's a full list. And I would say
you can only get in contact with a couple.
Yeah, like these are all international businessmen. Yeah. They are traveling. The only one who has been in the country for the last, like, week is David Sagstad, and the rest, so that I can basically eliminate the others from your list or your capacity to talk to them.
Yeah, fair.
So, because otherwise, there are a few characters in this one that were introduced on the fly. The waitress, the guy changing money at the casino, the police with the big hammer hands, the doorman.
Something like investigating all of the other members. That's like something that Poirot passes off to Jap. And Jap comes back one day and says, no leads here.
Yeah, exactly. So that would have been that sort of a feeling.
Yeah.
But I liked this. I enjoyed it. I think it wasn't, it was much more, like a little puzzle to put together as opposed to a classic, like, these 5 people could have done it. Each of these 5 people has... But I feel like if we do that every single time, it becomes too samey.
Absolutely. It's always a fear.
Though it is something I probably want to do for my next one, make it a little bit more of a, there are 5 people in a room.
Cool.
Any of them could have done it, figure out why they would have done it, and then figure out why they didn't do it, and then be left with whoever's left. Is maybe what I'm thinking of, but I haven't planned it all for the next one yet.
Yeah, that's great. I'm looking forward to it.
But yeah, I think that worked pretty well. Any other questions? The 826, I'm glad you finally found out about. Originally, it was just her office was at 826, but then I wasn't sure if you're going to go to the office, so I made her home at 826. And I figured, let's just keep this up. I literally Googled, like, numerology money numbers. And I found a person who's like, 8 and 26 are so money.
I didn't know 26 was a money symbol.
Yeah, I just found a random blog post from, like, a numerologist. And I went,
5 is basically a $sign. What's wrong with it?
Yeah, true. And I just want to put in there, not so much to be a real clue. They're not a clue for anything, but it is more of the, hey, even if you don't believe other people when, like, Victoria said, they say, oh, Victoria was super into this stuff, like she was a true believer, you get evidence that she has made personal decisions that presumably cost a lot of money based on occult numerology.
Absolutely.
She is a
And
true believer.
that sort of stuff, again, much like the casino things, I objectively knew that. I had that information, but only when talking to David did it really feel, all right, I am convinced by you, I am convinced by myself, I understand.
But yeah, so I wanted that, is like an indication of active behavior rather than testimony that makes you think, okay, yes. But testimony then helps. Like, it's all that evidence that kind of ends up confirming itself.
Yeah, there's those sorts of things. It's like, you'll see this in Poirot sometimes, where it's like Poirot reaches his denouement and says, man, everyone that I talked to said that he was such a nice guy. So this happened. Well, I just had to sit back and think, okay, he is a nice guy.
Yeah.
And just when other people say it, it helps. It really does.
But yeah, I think you did really well. I think like you went to the right places at the right times. You got the right inferences from things. You had a fun little bit with Hayden. I think doing it at the denouement, honestly, while we were recording this, someone on our Discord said, I miss the old denouements. You keep just like solving it in person and being like, yep, that's right.
I didn't even notice that a change had happened.
No, but I sort of, when I saw the comment, I went, oh yeah, I get what you mean. Because we are often now ending with such a feeling of like, wait, I have to piece this together. We don't want to do it in front of people. And it then becomes, like, even if they're fake people. And so I think bringing you back to this, like, no, you've done this to me before. I remember being, like, thrown, like, do that, like, hey, drowning at the dinner party, start the denouement, and I reckon you'll get there in the end. I was like, what are you talking about? It's like, you'll get there. But I like it because it creates that sense of, like, an ending in a wholesome way. The characters get to talk. So whoever commented that, I can't even remember who it was right now, that you commented that before we recorded the denouement for this mystery, so I fundamentally took your advice. So yeah, there you are. But yeah, I enjoyed the mystery. I think that's a lot of fun. Now, the plan for the next one is to go back to another, doing an Agatha Christie style?
Yes, I've got the next one in mind.
Nice.
So it'll just be a matter of rereading it yet again to make sure that I get everything when and where it's supposed to be.
Lovely. And then I'll as soon as this is done, I'll have leave. I've been excited to write another one.
Aww.
And I've been putting off until we recorded this one so I can earn writing it. But I think another one will be, we'll try and keep up with it this year, now that we're not working on other big projects.
That's the plan. Hopefully it works out.
But look, in the end, they're murder mysteries. They're hard to make.
Yep.
You don't, week by week, that's tough. But I think this one went really well. I hope you enjoyed it. Presumably at the start of this episode, we announced who the detective of the mystery was, who's going up on the wall of detectives. Obviously, at the time of recording, I don't know, because none of them are out yet, so no one's made any guesses. But congratulations to whoever was at the start of the episode. And so thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope you enjoyed another Solve This Murder.
Thanks for sticking with it, or if it's your first one, thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you for
joining. The first time.
If you enjoyed it, the best way to help support the show is to tell people about it. Let people know, talk about it online, talk about it in person, spread the word. Legitimately, even if you think you don't have like a circle to spread it to, you'll have at least one person, and then your listenership is effectively doubled. If everyone does that, we'll double our listenership. It means a lot to get more people listening. And then the other way you can support the show is through Patreon. We don't run ads on this show or in any of the shows that we make. Because I don't like them. I don't like them. You've seen how many capitalists I kill in this show when I need a victim. That's my goal for next mystery. Try not to just kill a business owner. I just like making the show the way it is. So, but it does mean that what we to support the show, we rely on donations. We rely on people who like what we do and want to see more of it in the world. People who want to support art and be a patron, like a classic old person who tells Da Vinci to paint stuff and gives him money for it. So yes, thank you for everybody who does support us on Patreon. Anybody who supports us on Patreon can appear as an NPC in either one of Danny's escape rooms for Escape This Podcast, or as a person in Solve This Murder. And oh boy,
we get a couple in Solve This Murder.
Who did we have in this one? We had thank you to Patreon donor Victoria Buckland for being killed. Thank you to Patreon donor Nicole, just Nicole, for killing. Thank you so much to Hayden Flincham. Thank you to Caleb Humble, to David Sagstad, to The Monk, who's Monk's Emporium. Thank you to Maximilian. What a great name to find. I will say, I loved getting Caleb Humble and Hayden Flincham. What great names for a murder mystery.
Pretty good.
I believe that was everybody who was...
Ruben.
Oh, and of course, our initial witness, thank you so much to Ruben Berg for supporting the show. Anybody who signs up can appear as an NPC, but also there's bonus episodes. There's a whole new weekly podcast, effectively, for anybody who signs up at $5 or more, including playtest audio of all of our escape rooms, including us solving a whole bunch of mysteries and Encyclopedia Brown mysteries and a whole bunch of fun stuff like that. There's video content for $10 donors. There's trivia for $20 donors. And all of that money, it supports this. It is what allows us to make this show and make it and make Escape This podcast as well, and everything we do as part of our network. So thank you so much for everyone who supports the show. And of course, many of you may have been hearing this because you supported us on Patreon enough to get this entire mystery on day one. If for all our $5 donors,
are they hearing this one as well?
Yeah, you get everything.
Oh wow!
You get so $5 donors also hear they don't have to wait for when a Solve This Murder comes out. They get the whole mystery.
Well, look at
on
you!
the first day. So hey, you might be hearing this way before anybody else. Thank you so much for supporting the show, and thank you, Dani, for being so cool.
Thank you
and
so
solving a
much.
mystery.
You're putting together some great stuff here. It's wonderful.
Right. Bye, everybody. Thank you for listening to Solve This Murder. To submit your own guesses for whodunit, send an email to solvethismurderpod@gmail.com. We read every theory we're sent and award the greatest sleuth with a place on our wall of detectives. To support the show, you can sign up for our Patreon and receive weekly bonus episodes, monthly videos, and full access to all parts of new Solve This Murder mysteries on day one. Thanks to all our patrons for supporting us. Thanks to Advanced Sagebrush and Shootouts for our theme music. And thanks again to all of you for listening.